It's a Miracle.
And Ivy, and you're listening to Black, Broke and Brilliant.
Coming up on today's episode, we'll be speaking to Hodder's debut author, Jessica George. So let's get straight into it.
Now, today we are joined by a very special guest. Jessica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Jessica George, and I'm the author of Maame.
Now,
As
Jessica,
you can see here.
This is the book. How does it feel being out?
Yeah, very surreal at the moment, but it's a wonderful thing to go into bookshops, especially the ones that I worked in, and see it on tables and then on display. So very surreal, but very incredible.
That must be such a full circle moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does feel like it, because I'm so used to selling other people's books and seeing them everywhere. And so now it's my turn.
I love that for you.
So tell us more about yourself and like how you got into writing and publishing.
Yeah, so I started writing 8 years ago. Maame is the 6th book that I've tried to get published. I started writing after I left university to study international business. I decided I didn't want to do that after a year. And so I took a degree in English literature and I was writing on the side. But when I realised I needed to still have a job whilst writing, that's when I got into books. So I used to work at various Waterstones, then at a literary agency, and then at a publishing house.
Wow.
So you've been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah, I've been around books forever now.
That's so amazing, especially how you started out doing something completely different and then found your way into writing and now writing your own book that's published. It's like really exciting.
I also just have to say, we've been reading the book. It's so good.
Thank you.
It's so well written. We've also said on the podcast, like, sometimes it can be challenging to really get into reading. I think especially nowadays, there's so much social media, everything's so quick. And I think to commit to reading a book can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. But this book, like, from chapter 1, you're invested. Like, you fall in love with the characters so quickly. Yeah. You're in for the ride.
It reads like very easy as well. It's not like you have to like rack your brains to understand each and every word. Like it reads as if it's a friend talking to you. Like just like even from the language, and there's so many like relatable moments which we'll get into later. But it is honestly fantastic. So like, what inspired you to write Maame?
So I started writing this during my own grieving process, and they started off as diary entries just on a random Word document, and I kind of left it behind, and a couple of months later I opened a new blank document to start a new book, and I saw it in my recents, and when I read it again, the idea of Maddie came to mind, and it just carried on from there.
Wow.
It's a beautiful story, it really is.
For it to come from like such a personal place, like your diary entries as well, was how did it feel, almost like not bearing your soul, because Maddie is still a fictional character, but to know it came from like real entries, what was that process like?
Yeah, really cathartic, because I got a lot of personal stuff out before I took it out. So Maame is, if it were completely based on me, it would be a lot longer than this. But because I wanted to add more fiction and less about me, I took those parts out and then fictionalized it again. So the first draft was very honest, very open, and that was a very cathartic experience for me. And then, of course, adding the fiction and the humour is what made it a lot easier.
Something I wanted to touch on, in the book you do mention that in Ghanaian culture we're kind of expected to keep all of our family business very hush-hush on the down low. So when it comes to writing a book like this that is based on a lot of your own experiences and your family and friends, how did you find that? Was that challenging or was that liberating?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because I think a lot about whether I am naturally a private person or I've just been brought up to be a very private person. And I think it's a lot of when you have maybe first generation parents, because I've had friends from like Brazil, from other African countries, from Italy, who have said, my parents told me the same thing. You keep everything that happens at home. And so I think a part of me was quite wary of that when I first started. And that's why so much fiction and humour came into it. And I took so many personalised bits out. But I also had an author reach out via her editor and say, I hear you're working on this really incredible book, but you may want to be careful of how much you put into this book, because once it's out there, it really does act as public domain. And so by the time I was like in my second or third draft, I knew that I wanted to strip back a lot of the personalized bits.
Yeah, that must be like such a difficult decision as you're writing, because again, it being based off of your diary and like real diary entries and like somewhat real events, and then like knowing when to pull back to not give all of yourself must be like quite a struggle sometimes.
I mean it definitely was, but I think I am just naturally quite reserved, so, and it's a lot more fun to make things up. So to make Maddie's life up and stories up and families up and friends up, so they balance out.
Even from just like reading it again, it is fiction, but so many of the references were like so accurate, like too accurate for my liking. I was reading being like, yo, is this about me? Like from literally like the parents who go to Africa for God knows how long, however many months, and kind of just like leave you to get on with things, to the references about, you know, being the eldest African daughter and just kind of being told like, this is your duty, these are your responsibilities, which is something I do want to get into, because for a lot of us who are from like West African backgrounds or even like Caribbean backgrounds, like the stress that is put on the eldest daughter is a different type of stress and strength that like I haven't seen before. And you make reference, so this is just a quote from the book. I was raised to be independent, to wash my own clothes, to shop for food and cook my own meals, to do my homework on time. I didn't need to be looked after. I was proud to be trusted. Dad left me to do it because he knew I could. I was the well-behaved one. And this idea of I was proud to be trusted, I didn't need anyone to look after me. If we're so busy looking after everyone else and just cracking on with everyone else, who is looking after us?
It's quite a sad moment when Maddie says those things, because I used to say those things, and I think there comes, when you're a child and you're being told, oh, you're very wise for your years, you're very old, I think it's meant to sound like praise, but actually the older you get and the more you realise how much was put on you when you really should have just been a child, I think is what's really sad. Like, as Maddie's saying this, you can tell there's a bit of pride to it, but as the book goes on, you can see the effects having such a responsibility has had on her.
And it's almost like the sons and daughters of the same West African parents have different parents in a way, completely different experiences. And I feel like sons, get away with a lot more. They can move out earlier. They have a lot more freedom, and daughters have to hold the fort down. And it does kind of, rob you of that innocence a little bit, which I think you really nailed in the book. It's so relatable. And again, like you said, some of the things that Maddie says, I'm like, I have said those words. You're taking those words directly out of my mouth.
And then the fact that like Maddie has a brother who is the direct contrast of that. Like he kind of washes his hands and he's like, without spoiling it, like, you take care of dad, like that's your thing. I'll send you money every now and then. But she's the one who is there like day and night, missing out on like nights out and social life to take care of her father. And when I tell you, it was very, very relatable. Like, I've even had similar conversations, even recently, with like my dad and my parents about this whole like leaving the responsibility on my head, and that whole idea of like, but I know you're the responsible one, I know you can just handle it, but it's like I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to. And like trying to communicate that is so hard. So like actually seeing it written down on paper, like in this book, and like hearing it just made me feel so heard and seen. And it's just like, okay, I'm not the only one.
Exactly. And even in my family, like I have an older sister, and there's a running joke when my dad would call her mum, and it's like, I hate that. Just say it as it's banter, and we're like,
oh my gosh, is it
like, no, I'm the child here, so what's going on?
It's really a lot.
It's a lot. And again, it always comes across as a compliment, but it's really not.
It's not, no.
Not at all. I also would love to talk about the name of the book, Maame. Like, I'm half Ghanaian, so I can't explain how proud I feel to just see the name Maame written on the cover of a book. Like, it's so powerful. I just wanted to ask you about the choice to call the book Maame.
So the choice actually came from my literary agent. I think, so this book was originally called Maddie Writes Mid-20s, which, when it was out on submission, wasn't the final title, but I was like, it will be fine just for literary agents, because usually when you start a book and you have a title, it usually changes just based on like how the market is doing and how well it responds. And my agent said, when we were about to submit to publishers, well, how do you feel about the title? And the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, I don't really want her age on the book, because I feel like that's going to make a lot of people look at it and think, oh, that's not for me. I'm no longer in my mid-20s or whatever.
Yeah.
And so she said, well, how do you feel about like playing on the fact that Maddie has two roles? She basically has two names. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, what about Maame / something? And then in the end, we just decided Maame. And it was a real big moment, because I thought, if people see that in the bookshop, how many people are going to pick it up? Because they don't know what it means. Not many people are going to know what it means. And it was just the confidence from my agent that was like, well, that's what the book is for. Like, we'll have taglines, we'll have things like that, but it's a strong enough title that if people look at it and they go, oh, I'm not going to read it because I don't know what the title means, then they're not the people you want reading your book anyway. Right. So, yeah, the title has been a big hit. Out of all the publishers that were interested, there was only one who was like, oh, have you thought about, maybe changing the title? But we didn't go with them anyway. So, yeah, it's been wonderful. My mum is in love with it. She's like, oh my gosh, a Tweeword is out in bookshelves. People are going to see it. And, I've had a lot of people who are called Maame, because that's the actual name, who were like, I've never seen my name on a book. A reader... Have I moved that?
No, you're good.
A reader was carrying a tote bag, which is a tote bag had the exact same cover on it, and a security guard stopped her and said, "That's my daughter's name." And they both just had a conversation about the book, because she had read it before, and she before publication. She's a bookstagrammer, and they literally just stood in the store talking about my book. So that was a really big moment.
That's such a beautiful moment, especially for it to come from literally the name of the book. Like, see, titles are so powerful, and even like the front cover kind of dictates when you see it in bookshops, like, do I like it? Am I going to read it? But yeah, it must have been quite a tough decision, because obviously, like, it is a twee word, so even that whole discussion about, will people not understand what it means? Will they not read it because of it? But like, standing in the conviction, and it's so great you had the support of your agent as well, to say like, let's do it. For anyone who doesn't know, like, Maame means woman in Twi. Yeah. So that kind of brings me on to my next question. Like, what does woman mean to you and for Maddie?
I mean, for Maddie, and I think it just means so many different things. I think because Maame is also a term of endearment, so it's like calling someone sweetheart or dear. I think what I look at is what people put on the name, because people who are called Maame haven't had the responsibility that Maddie's had, but because Maame means to be a woman, I take that as to be older than your years. And so for Maddie, I guess it means a lot of growing up before your time, which I think, like we've said, is the case for a lot of older daughters, and usually just daughters in general. I think I've had a lot of people who are like, oh, I have like sister siblings, but this still feels very much like my life.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, something, just to move on slightly, that I'm just so excited to ask you about, is just the fact that this book feels like it's such a good representation of what it can be like for a person of colour to exist in predominantly white spaces, and particularly being the only black person in a meeting or the only black person in a workspace. And there's just a quote from the book here: "It's mentally exhausting trying to figure out if I'm taking the comment on my hair or lunch too seriously. It's isolating when no one I know here is reading the same black authors I am or watching the same shows." And that is just something that we can, I think, all relate to. We can all relate to. And I'm so glad that you've weaved that through the book. Was that important to kind of highlight throughout for you?
Yeah, very much, because I think if you don't go through it, you don't realise how draining it is. Yeah. I've wanted to leave jobs because I'm the only black person in the room. And we hear a lot of, oh, it's not always about race, or, is it really about that? But it's those subtleties. It's like when people say something, it's like, this is a microaggression, but only I'm the only one in the room who can point it out. Yeah. And if I point it out, I have no backup, because it's literally just me. I don't have anyone else saying, oh, she's actually right. And so it's really hard to describe to people who are not the only person of colour in the room, how mentally exhausting and physically draining it is to be in those spaces. And I can honestly say that is the reason I've left as many jobs as I've left, because I can't put into words how sad it is when no one can like relate to anything you're saying, or you really are triple checking what someone has said to you.
Yeah, you start second guessing yourself and everything. And I think there's even a part in the book where Maddie's friend comments on her hair and she's like, is that a...
She does. She's like,
is that a...
should I be offended?
Yeah.
Am I being too sensitive?
Exactly.
And it's just sad because she doesn't have anyone to say, no, you're not being too sensitive. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. But, I think there's always this fear of being coined like the angry black woman.
Yes,
Or you're too aggressive.
Exactly,
It's like if you have feelings, you feel like you can't share them because of how it's going to be skewered or how it's going to be like twist. But I think we can all say like everyone has had some kind of experience like that. Like for me, it's okay. I might have had braids in one day. I take it out and then oh my gosh, no, you cut your hair. Your hair's so short. Like what happened? Or vice versa, if I get my braids put in, then like, oh my gosh, your hair so like it did not grow overnight.
Oh my gosh.
But like, I don't have the energy to explain that to you, and it's just like if you get it, you get it. But like, again, if you haven't been surrounded by other black people, other people of color, other cultures, then in some ways I can kind of understand like your ignorance, but. It's draining on like you as the person. Like everyone can't be that ignorant. Like it's really a lot. And there's a part in the book, like we'll kind of move on to speaking about like work and trying to find work in your 20s. But there is a part in the book where sadly like Maddie gets fired from her job, which is already like underpaying her, overworking her. The boss is a mess. Yeah. She is a hot mess, crying in the loo, taking on way too much. Yeah. And again, she is the only black person like in her office, in the department, and they fire her over something that wasn't even her fault. It was actually just the boss like taking on way too much. And that in itself is like a separate thing of knowing when to say no. But even like the pressures of, again, like being a woman in a male dominated space, feeling like you have to do the most or earn your spot. But yeah, when she got fired for something, I was so mad. I was sat here reading it and I was like, no way they did her dirty. Like that's, it's all part of it. Like being the one that blame can be laid to, or like the scapegoat, and feeling like you don't have anyone else to like back you up is probably like the hardest part. It's almost like that fear, like I'm on my own. Yeah,
it's a really hard revelation that she is entirely disposable, and that she is the only one who can stick up for herself. Because she even has, you know, which I've had, which I hated, was colleagues come up to you quietly and separately and say, "Oh my gosh, you're right. Oh my gosh, yeah. I can't believe
do it in front of everyone."
Honestly, that's the thing.
It's like you actually know better.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're just leaving me on my own here.
So I am right, but no one else is going to know this because you've literally just cornered me to tell me, "Oh my gosh, you're so right. She's out of control." But in front of everyone, it's you're completely on her side, and I think that's the saddest thing about Maddie's job at that theatre.
It is sad, and I think you realise that you're just not in a safe space.
And
that's the worst thing. And then you get to a point where it's like, okay, well, do I prioritise my mental health and leave? Or do I keep the job and pay my bills?
Yes, exactly.
You know? Yeah. And it shouldn't be a decision that you have to deal with, but so many of us do.
Yeah, and this is what we say, like, silence can speak a lot louder than words. So even as you said, that moment where the other colleagues who are like watching this unfold then come after and be like, "We know it wasn't your fault." Okay, but why didn't you say that at the time? Like, you still stood there and watched me get fired, knowing full well that this wasn't like my fault. And it's seeing that in other places and other examples, like in the workspace, and again feeling like I really have to have my own back. And it, like you said, it can be so draining. Like, always having a guard. Always, like, honestly, you have to be ready to fight today.
Like, you don't have any time to relax. Like, when you're at work, you're 24/7 just on your guard. Alone and on your guard.
Which is like an extra stress that white people don't have to deal with. On top of all your work stress and all the responsibilities, that's another thing you have to worry about day in, day out. And I did want to ask, I guess, like, I think me personally reading the book, I really did feel seen with so many different things that you mentioned. But did you feel any kind of pressure to represent the Black British community or Ghanaians in general?
No, I think a lot of it came quite naturally. thankfully I didn't feel any pressure because I might have gone overboard or done too little. But it just felt like an honest portrayal of Maddie's life, like her trying to find her place in her family between two cultures, and it just felt very natural to put that at the forefront because it is a huge part of who she is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like I don't feel as if we see enough of that, so to have this book that literally fully embodies like so many different elements of the Black British experience, and again like balancing two cultures, and again it's not everyone you can kind of like explain the intricacies of what that family culture means and that family structure. And even with one of Maddie's friends at work, like they've got like an understanding that they don't share too much about like their family. It's like I know she's going through things with like her parents, but there's like a line we don't cross, and I don't push the boundaries with that. So that, again, like having someone who understands your experience fully and seeing that is just so refreshing. It is so refreshing.
Yeah, we need more books like this in the world. Like, I can't tell you how excited I was every day to read the book. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to read today that I relate to? Like, that is so refreshing.
It's so great because like the book deals with themes of like navigating white spaces as a person of color. It deals with like grief, friendship, trying to navigate work life, like just anything and everything you could possibly go in your 20s and even 30s. I'd say like this book has it all, like dating, relationships, and navigating that. Like it's literally like what we speak about on our podcast on the regular. So like there's a point where Maddie is looking for a new job, and like during the job search, the only thing that's coming up is jobs with like 23k salaries. And we've even said this, like the maths doesn't add up in terms of when you see a job description and like the roles and responsibilities, it's endless. It's endless. They want you to work on weekends, overtime, put in extra work. And then you look at the rate and you're like, what can I do?
It's not adding up. What is one meant to do with that?
They think, oh, 20, but over a year? Over 12 months? It's like, it doesn't make sense. And Maddie like questions what she wants to do with her life, and she says, I can't comprehend living to work, but I'm afraid of working just to live. And the amount of times I've asked myself that very question or shared that statement, it's like, what do I do here? I want to enjoy it and live life, but I can't afford it, and work is just not it. But I also hate this idea of like grind, especially like when you're not in an environment that like really nurtures your growth and development. It's just like doing something to get a check and then moving on to the next thing.
It's something I've been talking to with a friend of mine, actually, who Shu is based on, and she rarely complains about her job. So she works in tech. She doesn't love it, but it's very well paid. And I remember we were taking a walk once, and I was talking about, you know, working in publishing and how like poorly paid it is. And she was like, it was the first time I'd heard her say that she didn't really like her job. And I was just kind of under the impression, like, how can you keep going then? She was like, the money's really good. And there is something about not having to be stressed about money and bills. And if something suddenly comes up, then I can pay it or whatever. And I just thought, it's so sad that in a lot of careers we have to choose either or. You have to either choose to be happy and have no disposable income, or to kind of day to day work a job you don't love, but know that once you get home everything is taken care of. And I think it's so sad that there seem to be few jobs where you can marry the two.
Which is also really sad because you're giving so much of your time and your energy and your life and your creativity. At the end of the day, you should be able to pay your bills and have some left over to do the things you want to do with your life and to enjoy your day to day. You shouldn't really be having to pick and choose.
It's definitely like finding the right balance can take so long. And even like I remember when I was younger, I'd look up to, you know, like people who were in their 20s and 30s and even 40s and be like, wow, they really got their shit together. Like they're probably in one career, it's probably great, like probably pays the bills, they have disposable income. And then I got to the age myself and I was like, sorry, what? like trying to find a job in itself, like when I left uni, in my mind I was like, cool, I've done all the right things. I've done the societies, I've done the CV, I've been spreading it out. I was like, it will be easy. They always tell you like doors open once you go to uni. Any door you want open. Yeah. Come summer.
The doors are
honestly.
I was like, wow, I'm really going back to this you know, the kind of job that pays per hour or like pays per day, and it's just like, this is where are the doors? Where are the open doors? And
honestly, that's one of my biggest complaints about kind of how we're taught in schools. Just the kind of idea that if you do everything people say, you do your internships, you go to school, you get your good grades, you go to university, then that is the way you are happy in life. And it's just very false. I remember I did all the internships, I left, did all the work experience, got great grades, studied really hard, had no social life to be able to do it, went to university, did well, and still every time I was trying to apply for a job, I either didn't hear back or got a rejection like 2 months later. And I just think, it's just so difficult to adult these days.
It is. It's so draining as well. I also want to talk about Maddie's mum and her mentality towards work as well, which I think is a really important point, because older generations are just like, you're employed, what's the problem?
Yeah.
You are in full-time work, your bills are paid, why, what's the problem, why are you upset?
Yeah.
And also like happiness doesn't even come into it, I think, for a lot of the older generation. It's just like, you need to pay your bills, you are doing that. Stop speaking. I don't understand what the issue is, and it's like, it's a lot more than that.
Yeah, it really is. I think, as I get older, sometimes I can see where they're coming from, because I went into a job that I loved, and that was publishing and books. But because it was so poorly paid, I couldn't come up with enough happiness to want to stay there. And so when they say things like, oh, make sure you've got a job where, if you have passions that require disposable income, that you are able to afford those. But then you have to take into mind the kind of person you are. I would struggle to be in a job that paid well, that just didn't make me happy. Like I think happiness is just a really weird entity. It's a really weird thing. How you achieve it is just so odd. I thought how you achieved it was money, and then I thought how you achieved it was doing what you loved. But I think you need both of them to just work. Yeah, finding the balance between both of them, which is really difficult, and is something a lot of parents don't understand, because a lot of parents just think you just need to be able to have a roof over your head, to pay your bills and be comfortable in that aspect.
Yeah. And it's like, I get it, because they made a lot of sacrifices and they won't stop telling me. It's like, when I was your age, I moved here, didn't know anyone, got a house, raised you kids. And it's like, I really and truly, like, with my entire heart, appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it's different. Like, you did all of that so I could have a different life.
Yeah.
But the level
of expectation...
now we're working the same
now.
The level of expectation,
this isn't what you suffered for.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you're still living at home. Like, oh, why are you complaining about a job? As long as it pays, it's like, no. It's sad that you feel like, we have to sacrifice one or the other. Like, again, lots of people say money can't buy you happiness, but like, it does take care of the things that you need. You don't need to worry that like your rent and your bills and all that kind of stuff is being taken care of. But like, again, if you personally like don't feel like you're growing or developing or like enjoying where you are, and you're kind of just like wasting your days, like I get up and do the same thing. It's like draining personally. But trying to get parents, West African parents, to understand this is quite difficult. And they're like, oh, you new kids, you young kids wanting all of this. And it's like, I just want to be happy and make money too.
And it's like, you don't have the same work ethic. And it's like, I just would like to enjoy my day.
Yeah,
I'm not asking for a lot.
Your work ethic was wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm sorry, but I don't have your work ethic because it was wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you struggled, and now all I hear is how you struggled.
Yeah,
you
shouldn't have struggled. Why do you need to be happy too? I'm happy.
I find that so crazy. And even within the workplace, when you have like the really senior old school people who have like been there before you.
Yeah.
some of them feel like they need to check you, or that you need to have struggled the same way they did, or like you can't step up, or you can't get that promotion too soon because I had to work and do this for 2 years before I even got half a promotion. It's like, why does everyone want us all to struggle? Like, we should be trying to make it easier for like the next generation, those who come after us.
It's so sad because a friend of mine went to her boss for a promotion because she was like, the way I'm working doesn't add up to the money I'm making. So she went to her boss and she said this, and the boss was like, when I was your age, I would have never asked for a promotion. I was far too young. I was like, well, that's your mistake.
Yeah, that's
got nothing to do with her. Yeah, we're talking about me. We're talking about the work I've done. If you didn't feel like you could go to a promotion, if your company didn't have the money, etc. But this company was pulling in money, and the money for a promotion was there, and she was working hard enough for it. And the fact that she went to her boss and her boss said, oh, wow, you've only been here for XYZ amount of time. When I was here for that long, I hadn't gotten a promotion yet. I'm like, we're not the same.
Yeah.
We're not the same at all.
It's also like 5 years ago is not today. Like,
oh my gosh,
not today's prices. It's not, and it, for me, this whole like idea of like there has to be a time limit on things. If I'm putting in the work and I'm doing the job and I'm very capable, like why not give it to me? Because honestly, if you're going off, let's say, like CV or skill set, it's all there. So tell me why you want to refuse giving me the promotion.
And most importantly, when you know the company has the money, that's what hurts the most.
Exactly.
Like, you have the money to spare. You could give me a promotion. You could say, oh, well done for all your hard work. Keep it up. But you've just gone, we'd rather not.
Yeah. For me, it's when your responsibilities are increasing, but the salary is not increasing.
It's the same. And you're like,
it's not adding up.
Now we really want to challenge you to see if you can. Yeah, but I've been doing it. Like, when am I going to start seeing the benefits now? Yeah. And it's having the confidence to go up to your boss and be like, I'm doing the work. I feel like I deserve this, because I feel like for so long, like as women, as black people, as people of color, like we've kind of just been taught to like be grateful. Like, just be grateful.
Be glad you've got a foot in the door.
Yes, you've got a foot in the door. Like, you keep working on your low salary, and the time will come. Like, your time will come. But when? My time is now. My time is now. So this whole idea of like really going and grabbing exactly what you want, and like having the confidence to do that, because if they won't pay you, there sure will be another place that will.
That will, exactly.
And then that's when they'll realise, we've lost a good one there. Should have just given her money. We had it spare.
Yeah, Steve. And I also just think if I was an employer and someone that worked beneath me had come to me and said, can I have a promotion? I'd be like, do you know what? Go on.
Yeah.
How do you?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's embarrassing when you're an employer and all your employees are not happy.
Yeah.
I just think, what kind of company are you running?
Yeah.
You're a terrible boss. Yeah. All your employees are unhappy and you have the power to do better, but you've literally just chosen not to.
Yeah. I think it's about like feeding into that development as well. And like when they do show you that they too care about like your development and your growth, you can generally see yourself there like for a long time and grow within the company, which I feel like everyone should want that.
Exactly.
But if you're just gonna keep me here and keeping why would I not jump ship? Like, it doesn't make
like,
any
what
sense.
incentive do I have to stay here? I'm leaving. Here's my notice.
That's why I don't believe in like loyalty to your boss. I just think if you can get better elsewhere, just go.
Yeah. If you're loyal to me, me too, I'll be loyal to you.
Exactly. You have to start both ways.
It works both ways,
And it does make you realise how disposable you are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they can replace you like that.
I quite like the idea. So like when I was looking for jobs, I was on like Instagram a lot and watching these videos of like people talking about, you know, how to ask for that promotion and like how to negotiate. Because I didn't think I could negotiate. I thought like going into an interview, they ask me the questions, I accept, they give me, you know, the rate of the salary, I accept or I decline it, and that was it. And again, that was the idea of like being grateful for just being there. But watching it and feeling inspired to negotiate your salary at the start, because if they said they wanted me, cool, I'm in a good position to be like, okay, now let's talk money and benefits, healthcare, insurance, all of that. And it's like having the confidence and the knowledge to know that you can do that. But also like we should be interviewing our interviewees as well. Because I know what I can bring to the table. What do you bring to the table? And I think we need to start doing that more often.
There was something online that said when jobs ask for 3 recommendations, ask them to talk to 3 happy employees.
Love that.
And then you see the reviews.
Send me your references. Love that.
The person who was in my role last, why did they leave? think that should become the norm.
Yeah.
Really and truly.
No, because I remember I started this job, not the job I'm currently in now, a job in the past, and the person who was in that role before me was only there for 6 months, and I was like, that's probably a red flag.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and once I started the job, I was like, oh, I get it.
Oh, now
And me too, I handed in my notice and I left. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, it makes sense now. So that's very smart.
I love the bit in the book. So it also deals with like dating, and Maddie is, I wouldn't say she's 100% like introverted. She hasn't really been given the time or had the grace to be social and to go out and to date because of the circumstances she's in as like the main carer for her dad. But when she does not even go dating, when she was out at the theatre and someone speaks to her and it's like, you talking to me? I've had so many similar experiences like that. But it was weird because from how you read Maddie, you wouldn't expect her to come alive with like the flirting and the quick exchanges. I was like, okay, Maddie. I was like, okay.
Love that for her.
Oh.
So that in itself was like so enlightening because yeah, me too. I can be quite shy, but sometimes it's like I can give the game and the
Honestly.
chat. But then 2 seconds later, I'll be like, oh my goodness, this is terrible.
I love people like that. They're so reserved and quiet. You have no idea who they are until they talk to a certain someone, and they completely switch. I quite like that about Maddie, but it's also a play on how we don't quite know who she is. Like, who she is at home, is that who she is, or is that who she has to be at home? Who she is with Ben, the person she meets at the theatre, is that who she has the capacity to be? But because, like you said, she hasn't had the space to date, to flirt, to, you know, get to know people, is that who she is? And I think it's just a case of like her trying to figure out who she can be and why she wants to be whoever she is around certain people.
Yeah.
And I think different people bring out different sides of her as well, which is very, very relatable. Go on.
I think that idea of like figuring out who you are is something that we all kind of go through at this stage, like in our 20s. And I think just even that moment was such like a subtle way of showing that entire thing. Like, oh my gosh, like I can be this person who's like flirty and gets along with you. But then, yeah, I'm also this person. I'm also that person. So even the idea of like her trying to figure out who she is and who she wants to be and what different people bring out in her, like completely represents at least like my experience trying to figure stuff out.
Even with friendships though, I feel like I'm a different version of myself with different friends, and it's like, which one of these people am I actually? Like, which one am I? Because there are 7 of me currently.
So many different friendship groups, and it's like how you almost like switch between, okay, I'm this kind of person. I mean, you are still the same person, but it's like you bring out different sides to you depending on like who you're with. Yeah. And I think even with Maddie, so she's got like, is it Shu, her friend at work?
Yeah.
And it's like that's her work friend, but then like when she leaves, it's like, what, am I still going to see you as much? Or it's almost like that idea of like friendship for convenience, which is something that we've spoken about as well. Like one thing that came up that I really like was in regards to friendship, it's not based on love or loyalty, but convenience and proximity. And yeah, how is that like? Because I think we've all kind of been in situations where, you know, you think someone's your best friend, like we're gonna be friends forever, and it might just be like that's who you're friends with at uni, or those are your roommates, and it's because we're close at this point in time.
Exactly.
But then later on, it kind of drifts.
Yeah, I had that with a few school friends. I think school is definitely that case because it's such a closed environment, and everything you do together, and you're there every day. You spend the weekend together, and it was after university where I realised that we just weren't as close as before. And there was a moment where I thought, this is really strange, because at this point we've now known each other for like 7 years, and that feels like a weird thing to just throw away, to just like not try and upkeep. And I remember there was a time where I was like, oh, I'd really like to have a friend that I can say I've known for 10 years, or I've known her for 20 years, like it's some kind of accomplishment. And there is that sad moment where you realise we actually don't have that much in common. We were just around each other all the time. We knew the same people, we did the same things. But the older you get, the more you change, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's so weird when people haven't seen someone for 10 years and they're like, oh, you've changed. And I'm like, well, obviously.
Of course I have.
A whole decade has passed.
I'm not 16 anymore.
Yeah.
I'm almost 30. Why would I be the same person I was when I was 16? And so I think when those relationships and those friendships do fade, it's quite sad, but it's also quite eye-opening in the sense of there are different kinds of friendships. Like, we are not best friends because we've known each other for 10 years. We have to be best friends because you've been there for me and I've been there for you, and it's very easy to keep in communication. And I think that's something Maddie has to realise, is that just because you spend a lot of time with the person doesn't mean they're your friend.
It's so true.
And that's okay. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
it's completely okay.
It's actually coming to terms with the fact that it is okay, because I've been in the same position as well. It's like people I've known since like primary school, and then we get to sixth form and like now off at different sixth forms, and then like we just don't speak, and me feeling like, oh my goodness, like I want to hold on to this, but friendships and relationships are a two-way street. Like you can't be the one always putting in the effort if you're not getting anything back, but also coming to that realization that like it was good while it lasted.
Not all friendships are meant to last forever. And that's okay.
Exactly.
And I used to get so sad and upset about it, but then coming to the realization that, you know, like some people are in your life for a season, others for a reason, but like it's okay, and like you've got everything you could have got from that person and that experience, and you're gonna move on and make other friends who will pour into you in different types of ways.
Exactly.
And I think distance really tests those friendships. I think when you're together in the same space and you're seeing each other, of course you are, because you're in the same space. But the second you move away or you get a new job and you're not colleagues anymore, is that friendship still alive? But I don't think every friendship is meant to last forever, and that's okay. And like you said, I think you can learn a lot from your friendships. Even if it's a 2-month friendship, you can still take something away from it, which I think is a really good thing. Also, something that Maddie experiences in this book is a huge loss. Not going to say who it is, but I did want to ask how you found the process of writing about grief after experiencing it so closely yourself.
Yeah, so it was two main feelings. So it was a very cathartic experience. I feel like I processed so much during this book. So I started therapy after I'd finished my final draft of Maame, and the therapist I have is great. You know, I still have my fortnightly sessions. But as I was talking about the grieving process, she was like, you've processed a lot more than you think you have. And she said, well, why do you think that is? And I hadn't told her about the book yet. And I said, I think it's because I have written so much of this down, because Maame is about probably 30% of what I experienced and what I wrote down. I just didn't put it in the book. And so I got so much of that out. And so that was a great release. But then, because the truest parts of this book is Maddie's relationship with her, the person she loses, being very reflective of my relationship with the person that I lost, it's very hard to reread certain scenes. And we did a lot of editing with this book, almost over a year together of editing this book. And so I've lost count of the amount of times I had to reread certain very sad scenes. And that's where the fiction and the humour really helped, because I knew this is a really sad page, but if I turn over, there might be a joke. And that's what made it easier to just keep going.
Makes sense. And I think the book balances that really well, because it is an emotional roller coaster, but there are also moments that are really funny and joyous and warm, while there's also all of the grief and very real emotion. So I think you do that really perfectly.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And I know it couldn't have been an easy process, but like the book really does kind of speak for itself. I also wanted to talk about, so another kind of like adulting thing is this whole like pressure and idea of like moving out. So it's quite interesting, because whether or not Maddie doesn't move out because of personal issues and like being a carer, or whether she's just not ready to take that step, or whether it's money, it's like, again, everyone like has their reasons for not moving out. But when you get the pressures from like parents and friends being like, why are you still at home? As if it's a bad thing. Like, excuse me, you don't know about my home life, so let's calm down there. But also, like, good for you that you're in a place to move out and you can afford to. But like this whole idea of like pressure, and again, like when Maddie finally makes that decision, like it is really great, and she's like, oh my goodness, this is like a really enjoyable thing, and like she likes her housemates that she's about to move in with, And again, that seems like another opportunity to like develop new friendships. Like they seem like great people, and for her to have a life outside of home. But then again, like when she loses her job, it's like, oh my goodness, why did I just this house? So it's what was writing that like? Because I think it is honestly something that's so relatable, and like again, having the pressure from her mom and like her brother not pulling the weight. Like what was it about that made you want to explore that dynamic?
I think pressure is such a big thing now because of all these, do this before you turn this age. It's like the same with relationships, like owning a house, like being married. Everyone wants to do these things at a certain time. And I got to a point where I was just like, I hate those lists. I hate that pressure of feeling like I have to accomplish something by this time frame. And I think that annoyance with that kind of thing came out with Maddie and her need to move out, because like you said, it's not just her parents or her family, it's her friends who are also saying, why are you still at home? And like now I would never ask that question because it's so expensive to just live alone or to move out.
It's cost of living crisis.
Honestly, it's almost impossible to own a home. And considering all those facts, I just think it's weird that people still say things like, you haven't done this yet? You haven't done that yet? And it's just this sheep mentality, like you're all meant to have done this thing at the same time. And I just think people don't develop like that, or people don't want to do the things at the same time as everybody else. And so that's where that kind of annoyance, that pressure comes from.
No, I hear it. I felt it. I really felt it. And again, the idea of like, okay, you're not going to be paying my bills, so like, why are you so worried about where I'm living? Like, I'm good. I'm fine. So unless you're going to be paying that rent, don't ask me. Don't ask me about like moving out. But everyone is on like their own journey, and it's like, where does this level of expectation like come from? Because you've seen one person do it. It's like, me too. I need to take a picture and pose with the keys. Like, like it's okay. Like, it's great if you're in a place where you can afford that, but everyone's on their own journey, so we shouldn't be like pushing each other or having this level of expectations. Like, again, we all just like want the best for each other, but it's about everyone going at their own pace.
Yeah, and I think with older generations, it's frustrating because back in the day they were giving houses away.
Yes,
we were just giving them away.
40k. Yeah, they were just like, take it.
40k, and it was all yours. And it's like, we're not in the same time.
Oh my god,
the cost of living is really in crisis, so it's very different. And I think with friends as well, that pressure sometimes just doesn't feel like it's coming from a very good place.
Yeah.
And I think that's the issue with it.
Yeah.
It's
not judgy.
It's not like, oh, why are you still living at home? Like, what's going on? There's not like a open conversation a lot of the times. It's just like, why would you do that? It's just judgment.
Exactly.
And that's really frustrating because it's like, you don't actually know my situation. And there are very real reasons why I'm still at home.
Yeah.
And they're valid reasons.
My friends we have that mentality of we're very scared of renting because it does feel like money down the toilet. We kind of grew up with that idea of save to buy a house. But now it's impossible. It's almost impossible.
You know how much houses cost?
If you want to buy a house, you can't live in London.
No.
Or if you do, it's such a waste of money.
But then it's like, that for the next 50 to 60 years, all you're going to be doing is paying that off.
Yes, yeah.
What if you change your mind and you just decide, I want to live elsewhere? It's like, it's really like, it's sad that at our young age, we have to know exactly what we're going to do with our life for the next 60 years. Because you've agreed to a mortgage. Yeah. Like,
there's a commitment.
Commitments. It's legal. Like, I have to keep paying this money. So, again, the kind of like frivolousness of just being able to uproot and do what you want. And I might go and work remotely here. It's like, no, you're very limited now. You're very limited at such a young age. So, again, like, I see the benefits, and it's great to like own your own home and have something that's yours, but I'm in no rush
to get there.
Nor can I afford it at this point, so we're just gonna take our time there.
Yeah, exactly. I did also just want to ask about Maddie's friends. Avi in particular, love her. So funny, just unfiltered goddess. I love her. I was going to ask, were Maddie's friends based on your real friends in real life?
Yes, so Avi is more inspired by someone. So I don't know an Avi completely, because Nia and Shu, Maddie's best friends, are my best friends. So Nia is Ashley and Shu is Camilla. And a lot of what they've said and the scenes in their book are real scenes. I always say that Nia, Shu and the dad are the most real characters to me, because they are mostly based off people. So I love when I hear, oh my gosh, I would love to have friends like Nia and Shu, because I'm like, I do.
I have
Yeah, I do. They're amazing.
They're very real.
Oh.
And it's such a blessing. I think when you do go through that phase of losing friends, but you realize the ones that have stuck around, because Ashley and Camilla I knew from school. So despite the fact that I lost a lot of friends from school just as we were growing up, the fact that those two stuck around is a very good example of like, if you want to, you will. Yeah. Because Ashley lived in the US for 3 years, but we both made it our priority to keep in touch and just to write letters and to have calls and things like that. And so I am very, very blessed to have a real life, Nia and Shu.
Oh, that's amazing. What is your favourite thing about Maddie?
Oh,
I know it's kind of a tough question because like she's your character.
Yeah, and it's kind of her Achilles heel as well. But she's very selfless, and I think there are not many people who want to do things for others out of the kindness of their own heart. And I think that is the case for Maddie, because you look at her and her brother, and she's at home not so much out of duty, but out of love for her dad, because her brother just left. Her mom just left.
There wasn't even a choice.
She was like, I would never leave my dad, and I think people like that are quite rare. And this is why I'm very quick to say I'm not Maddie, because I'm a lot meaner than Maddie is. And Maddie's just so sweet, and you know, people do take advantage, but I think when you meet someone like her who's just open to giving out of the goodness of their own heart, that's the difference. People do a lot of good things because they want something, but Maddie's just doing all these things because she wants other people to be comfortable and happy. She wants the people in her life to just have easier lives, even though it's a detriment to herself. But just the fact that she puts herself above others, she puts others above herself, is a great quality, but also a bad one, unfortunately.
Yeah, she is so genuine though. I feel like we need more people like that in the world.
Yeah,
she has some boundaries.
Yeah, for sure.
But she has such a pure heart that you can just really feel. And I just want to ask finally, what do you want people to take away from the book?
Oh, I think mainly with grief, I think if there's one thing I'd like people to take away is that there's no right way to grieve. I think however you mourn the loss of someone you love, which I think a lot of people are dealing with now with COVID and all of that, I think you just need to take your time. I was kind of in a rush to just try and get to this place of acceptance where I was over it, but you don't really get over it. And you're not supposed to. And so I think what I would have liked someone to tell me is like, just take your time. And however feels like the right way to grieve, like just grieve. Like if you need to watch a show to laugh, that's okay. But that when people lose someone they love, they don't want to laugh again because they're like, that's so rude. Like I've just lost someone I'm never getting back. Why would I want to be happy? And I think and random moments where I just start crying, I'm coming to accept that that's completely okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I love that I still cry about my dad because it means that he's still very very important to me. Yeah. And I would never want that to change.
Yeah.
It would be hard not to with going through grief. Like you said, it is a journey and you never get over it. It's just like learning to live with it, but also that person like gave you so much and you have so many fond memories. So it would make sense that you would like think back to a time and be like, oh, that was a great day, like laugh and smile. Like it's okay to do all of that. Like all the emotions are valid, and just knowing that it is okay to feel your feelings, I think is one of the most important things.
Yeah,
100%. I think after also losing someone that important, to also be adding pressure to like move past it, it's like that's not going to help the situation. You've gone through something horrible. You're allowed to feel that.
Exactly.
And there's no time limit on when you're supposed to be back to normal because like this is the new normal.
Yes. Exactly.
Learning to live.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Everyone, like Maame is available to purchase now, and it's also available as an audiobook, so check it out at your local bookstore. Thank you so much for being with
Jessica.
us.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Go and buy Maame. And if you want to share your thoughts on the episode, leave us a YouTube comment or message us on our Insta page. You know what to do.
Like, subscribe, follow. Don't forget to hit the bell so you get the notifications, and remember to share it with all your friends, family, and your book lovers.
We'll be back next Thursday. I've been Ivy.
I've been Samiracle. Thanks for listening.